Heavy as the Crown. Chapter 4. Uncloaked. This bright light. What's that thumping? That screeching noise? Pain. Dread. I feel it. Screaming. Death. I'm spiraling. The prince can't get a grasp on what's happening. What is he seeing? This noise. Chaos spiraling, hitting him. When one stops, another arrives like lightning, burning like fire. He sees surgery instruments tearing into him. Fear. And then an extremely sharp pain as orange flashes over him, and then nothing but a flame which ends in darkness. He staggers in his steps, trying not to fall. His sister, Vicelia, uses water from a nearby fountain to steady him. "Are you okay, little brother?" "Yes, I am. Just got a little dizzy," her brother replied. "You always get dizzy near roses or flowers. It's not allergies, so it's probably that it makes you think about Mother's memorial." Excelsa thought about her reply. Did she know that he had recently visited it? "It's more that I'm nervous having to see Dad again. Have to dress as a prince. A weak one at that." His sister looked at him. Using the water, she lifted his chin up. "You have a lot of power in that head of yours. Just because people don't see you using your abilities and they think you don't have them doesn't make you weak. It makes you stronger, having to keep them curtailed and hidden from everyone except Dad and I." Excelsa rolled his eyes and sighed, swatting the water to his left. "It's easy for you to say, sis. You use your powers. They are a part of you. You've learned to control them, and it's you. I only ever get to use it in the royal arena, alone. No one knows I have powers, and I had to flank the convergence." His emphasis on that word, alone, told his sister plenty. Her brother was lonely, more so in his own mind with the existence of his double persona. Which one was real? She could understand. She had never seen his powers despite her being one of the people he could use his abilities around. He didn't seem to want to tell her currently, and she wouldn't push him. Dad was busy, and Excelsa wouldn't dare stop his father, King Nicias' duties, to get some comfort. If only Mom was here, she thought, as she drifted a caring eye to her brother. The sound of footsteps in a hurry, a rather rapid pace. Someone running before Themis came into view. "What's the rush, Uncle?" the princess asked. Out of breath, Themis raised his hand as he gestured her to wait for him to catch his breath. After licking his lips, Themis said, "Your father has summoned you." "We know. The meeting's at noon," Excelsa answered back, trying to show his awareness of his duties. "No," Themis said with a small laugh. "He wants to see you both in the next 10 minutes. Full royal guard, please. We have diplomats from the City of Dreams. So be quick about it. He wants to speak in your presence." As Themis walked off, the two siblings looked at each other and hurried off to get ready. His father needed them immediately. What was wrong? Maybe it was about something insignificant, thought Excelsa. "Stressing already?" a familiar voice said. As Excelsa turned around, he saw Megaray, one of his scorpions. Red, flaming eyes with his orange skin emanating a soft glow, yet hiding his ruthless power. Excelsa had seen him in the Convergence. He wasn't afraid to use his power to its limits. It's why he picked Megaray. A dominating force with a hint of sarcastic humor. Yep, that summed Megaray up. "I'll be ready shortly, Megs." A shrill, mocking voice taunted back. "I'll be ready shortly," as Claudius walked in, his appearance exactly the same as the prince. Excelsa cocked an eyebrow. "You sure you want to make fun of me? Or should I just tell the king you're breaking the law of shape-shifting into or taking the form of one of the royal family members?" "Come on, seriously. Always with the rules, your highness, replied Claudius. Excelsior laughed, but looked at him and said in a snarky tone, "Guess I'm just talking to myself." Laughing and biting his tongue, Claudius transformed back into his normal self. A pale blue with black hair and turquoise eyes. So beautiful you would have thought the finest of these gemstones as nothing. His darker blue lips highlighted his eyes as his slim figure made his spiky hair stand out. The transformation process could be extremely quick or take a couple of seconds depending on what he was shapeshifting into. When shapeshifting, the patterns of the new skin tone, clothing, and other features would grow before becoming complete. These patterns looked similar to that on Persian rugs. It was truly an art. While most kids pretend to be something, Claudius was practicing his shapeshifting into these very things. He had used it very effectively in the conversions, camouflaging himself into the surroundings or shapeshifting into a dangerous creature. The limit was his understanding of that to which he transformed. Let me guess, my sister called you both. Yes, she did, and you should be having all your scorpions with you for this kind of event, Omega Ray said quite sternly. Claudius seemed to agree. You know you need to carry yourself as a future king at these meetings. You never know who may be eyeing you. Excelsior looked outside through the glass. He knew they had a point. I'm ready. Let's go. As he said this, the two loyal friends prepared to walk behind the prince, a sign of respect for his position. He looked the part, a navy blue full-length coat with gold chains and the symbol of Phagatorax, a dragon with a sword through its coiled tail. His had a crown along with a pair of wings attached to them, showing his royalty and his rank in the military. He had comfortable yet tough boots to fit the look. Not military, but not too casual. That, along with the sword and his crown, completed the look. As he met his sister at her room, he took her arm in his and walked. She wore a golden dress woven with emerald together. It looked spectacular. Her shoes were of emerald too. Her crown had emeralds and her hair had silver plaiting done by one of her maidservants. Her necklace and earrings contained blue diamonds, and on her thigh, an emerald blade. Quite rare, but hidden perfectly. You look beautiful, absolutely breathtaking. Along with the weapon to take breath away by another means, he said, at first in awe, then teasingly. His sister was supposed to walk behind him, but he never allowed her to, since he found out it was a requirement. They would walk together. 4 guards met them, along with the vigil. I came ahead of the visitors from across the verge. They will be here shortly, he said, looking at the siblings before joining and walking ahead of them en route to the throne room. The throne room, the main area that the king met anyone who wished to speak with him. 3 scorpions along with 16 guards and Theseus, the head of the royal guard. Him and the head of the king's scorpions would stand a little behind the king on both sides. The queen's throne had been removed, but otherwise they would sit on a platform slightly elevated above the prince and princess throne. The room had gold carvings and the thrones were gold, and so was the borders of the wall, which were covered in crimson drapings. All aspects of the room made it grandiose. The hall was lit by flames down its length, with 2 copper doors at its end serving as the only point of entrance. Above the walls were windows of a pattern of lions with holes no bigger than a baby's hand. This was the indoor throne room. To get to the throne were 5 steps. The path leading to the standing area had dragons, phoenixes, and eagles. Each king had a personal taste, but it was meant to remind you of the king's power. After about 10 minutes, the revered guests had arrived, messengers from the king of Zatlev. They had come with 6 soldiers from the Zilkari Guard, Zatlev's army. As the king watched them approach with a hand to his chin, he took a moment to acknowledge his children. Then, after nodding, looked to Themis standing at the bottom of the stairs and then at his uninvited guests. They had entered the standing area, the threshold of the throne. They kneeled to show respect. "Rise," King Ignatius ordered. "You may speak," Theseus told them. "Your Highness, King Ignatius, ruler of the world of light, the flame of the kingdom and protector of Titania, our king has a message that is both brief but of importance. He apologizes for any interruptions we may have caused to your day. The message is this: as a sign of our current unity, and in an effort to grow it and show our peoples that the threat of warfare is afar, that they are secure and can be comforted, I offer a request. 200 children from the Zatlev will visit Titania, and 200 Titans will visit Zatlev. Your son, Prince Excelsa, heir to the throne, shall accompany them, and show the sights and give them a memorable visit. Your daughter, Princess Visalia, will visit along with the 200 Titans and accompany my daughter. We shall give her all due respect, honor, and security as you require. I wish you well and a long life. His Majesty, King Bartholomew, ruler of the Arena of Night, Moon of the Wolf and protector of Zatlev, City of Dreams." The king thought a bit before requesting the messengers to rest, eat, and refresh themselves. "Themis, Excelsa, and Visalia, what do you think of this request?" "What is your opinion, your Highness?" Themis said, wondering what the king might have to say. "I believe it's a good gesture, a show of trust. I want to accept, but it would be unwise for me to not seek the advice of my most trusted advisor and the opinions of those it has a direct effect on." Visalia was the first to speak up. "I'm more than willing to go." Excelsa looked at his father and asked, "What about her guarding duties?" "I'm sure the royal guards can handle it for a day. Besides, you'll have your other 2 scorpions." "Just ask him, Dad." "I agree as well," was Excelsa's final decision. "Since we have no objections, you both need to prepare. Send the order out, Themis. Tomorrow it is." Themis beckoned the messengers over and then told them, "Messengers of the King of Night, our king has agreed. Tomorrow is the set date. We'll inform the children and their parents, as will you." "Your Majesty, I request a leave of absence to get all in order," Themis asked with a bowed head. A simple nod from the king, sending him on his way, along with the messengers. He first ensured they had all they needed for the trip. As the king dismissed everyone to go to the royal library, the vigil, prince, and princess bowed before leaving respectively. Soon, word had spread throughout the 2 lands and their capitals. Soldiers on either side hurried to ensure they would have a higher presence. If any of the children got hurt or worse, it could push the 2 nations to war. No precaution would be spared. Aside from the normal shops, stalls, marketplaces, and the like, extra stalls of juice, fruit, and food were arranged, especially catered to the children's liking. Sweets, desserts, and gifts were to be picked out directly by the princesses. Carriages along with horses for traveling to various locations, extra jackets, water, and shade coverings for either sun or cold in case the day ended up being an extreme of the mostly beautiful weather. The king's order by means of Theseus meant this was the priority, and it showed as thousands of Phagotaurecs ran, preparing for the special visit. The castle would be thoroughly cleaned and a banquet prepared, meals selected directly by His Majesty. As this gigantic undertaking continued on both sides of the verge, the royal families went to get ready and then rest for the day ahead. Despite quiet falling and most of the cities going to sleep, soldiers continued working until all was in place. After hours of slumber, the new day approached, bringing with it the ever-closing approach of 200 little children who would be visiting a strange land for the first time. Guards were already in place throughout the castles, and for the first time since the last war 30 years ago, a path of soldiers from either side of the verge to each of the palaces. Excelsior woke up early and rushed to go have a shower, eat some breakfast, and then dress. His time in the shower were always times that he spent deep in thought, thinking about his life. But at this time his thoughts went to the occasion at hand. How would he make this day memorable for these kids? He needed to make an impact to help grow this piece. The children needed to have fun. He wanted them to tell their parents positive and happy stories about the people, the place, and its culture. He had already decided to dress casually to help them relax and not feel like he was their teacher or caretaker, despite him being the latter. As he stepped out of his thoughts and out of the shower to get some breakfast, he took a deep breath and moved to relax himself. His sister was already in the dining hall, waiting for him with coffee. You know, I need to be ready and waiting for when the children arrive at the castle in Zatlev, but I wanted to say goodbye before I left. Oh, and remember, the gifts are in the hall nearest to my room. It's ready for when the children come back from the tour, his sister reminded him. So sweet of you, and thanks, my sister. I won't forget. You made this coffee. I can taste it, he said, after taking a slurp from the cup in front of him. Of course. Special occasion, special coffee, she said with a cute shrug. The prince got up and went to walk his sister with his coffee to the horses waiting for her and her 4 guards. After a hug and saying goodbye, he watched his sister gallop away across the path. He had about an hour before the carriages would start arriving and still needed to eat something. He went to the dining hall and made himself a cheese and turkey ham sandwich, along with some yogurt and strawberries. He went to stand at the cave of entrance after enjoying his breakfast. Any minute now and the carriages would be arriving. As if on cue, when the dining hall had been set, the first carriage came into sight. Omega Ray and Claudius stood at a slight distance to the right and left of him. He had ordered them to do so to not scare the children, especially with the presence of Omega Ray. In a matter of moments, the first carriage arrived. The commanders would help keep the youngsters in a relaxed form of order. They were casually dressed, but each had a weapon. As soon as the children were ready, and they were certain none were hungry or needed the bathroom, the tour of the palace commenced. There was no doubt entering the cave of entrance would be something unexpected. The prince could hear the curiosity of the youngsters as they spoke to each other, trying to guess how they would get to the castle. As soon as all 200 children had arrived, the tour began. When they had reached the entrance and the wings began to open, it drew many oohs and ahs as the children watched in awe. As they came into the hall of entrance, one little boy asked Excelsior why it was so dark. Excelsior said, "It's too dark, isn't it?" He turned to the children. "I need your help. Shout with me, lights, really loud. 1, 2, 3. A deafening shout of young voices filled the cave with an echoing lights. No sooner did they say it, and 2 archers had shot a flaming arrow, each lighting all the lamps in the hall, down to its length to the last 2 at its end. "Wow, that was epic," said a young girl. Excelsior smiled. So far so good. He had planned the palace tour himself. They would go to the throne room, the pools, the garden, and stop at the dining room for a quick respite and some snacks. The Zatlivian kids were happy, and everything was running smoothly. It took a great deal of time with 200 children wanting to sit on the throne, meet the king, and then later dip their feet in the pools. The princess had arranged for 200 white roses, 1 for each child, which they would receive at the gardens. The rest of the trip had been planned by his father. After the youngsters had seen the castle, a garden, and a few parks, including the stables, it became clear that the children were becoming restless. The prince beckoned to a guard standing nearby to come over. "The kids are tired. My dad planned this trip beautifully, but these children aren't tourists. It's too many gardens, parks, and attractions. To the second park. I think we should skip to the beach. The children will be able to play and relax. Give word to your commander. We'll go to Cretan Beach, was the prince's command. As soon as the soldier had left, Excelsior ordered the soldiers to get the children ready to go to the beach. It took about 30 minutes before they were all ready. It was a perfect day for the beach. The sun was at a comfortable temperature, with the cool water complementing it perfectly. A slight breeze on occasion added to the serenity and breathtaking beauty of the beach, which had smooth black stones and pebbles. The chefs had prepared delicious gourmet sandwiches as they were being requested by the youngsters. Plenty of pineapple and coconut juice and water were available. The kids were playing peacefully and frolicking in the water. It was a beautiful sight. Children from Zatlev playing peacefully, no malice or hate against the Titans, enjoying the beauty at hand. The water was blue, cool, and had the perfect amount of visibility. A wave edged further than the rest of the waves, coming halfway up the beach. Excelsior checked. All the children were accounted for. It was one of the odd waves. He thought about how his sister could have probably made this more fun. Something caught his attention from the side of his eye. A blue figure which disappeared behind a stall. Probably an admirer, Excelsior thought. "How is everything looking, Claudius?" the prince asked. "All in check. No danger near us at all." "Keep it that way," the prince replied. The prince looked into the distance. He could see a shadow across the ocean, growing slowly. It disappeared. He tried to keep an eye out, intent on finding it. He gave a signal to all the guards to be on alert. Minutes passed. Absolute calm. 7 seconds later, a wave rose 3 kilometers tall, traveling towards the beach at great speed. The prince swallowed and stole a quick glance to Amegore, who said, "I'd offer to punch it, but it won't do anything. We are dead. May we rest in peace." By now, it was 10 seconds away. Excelsior's mind raced. He needed his sister right now. If the children died, it would be war. He'd be the only survivor. He could feel something inside him, pulling his soul, hurtling towards the wave. If he did something, the world would know he had abilities. The matriarchal murderer. He closed his eyes in distress, eyes tearing. Sand grains began spinning around him, lifting off the ground along with water droplets. He could feel every grain. A vibration went through the ground. With his eyes closed, focus went to his powers. He had risen 5 meters off the ground. 3 seconds left. He opened his eyes. Blue lightning sparkled across his eyes. Put his right hand out, palm facing the ocean. The colossal wave wasn't stopping. He pulled his arm in before thrusting it out. The wave slowed to a stop 10 meters before shore. He turned his hand down and around, letting the water slowly subside back into the ocean. As he slowly dropped to the ground, heart pounding and breathing heavy, he could feel everyone's eyes on him. He looked down, then at a Titan with a bewildered look in his face. He felt bare, even naked, afraid of his power's impact. He could hear the whisper. "Did you know he had powers?" "No, he hid it from us. He's really powerful." "I can't believe he has power. He saved us, right?" "Powerless waste of a prince. He's a liar." Now it makes sense why his mom died. As he heard that, he looked up at the person who said it. He looked up. The blue figure was there. She nodded before leaving. The prince gulped. His throat was heavy. "Next, please, get the children to the hall prepared for them at the castle. I think it's best we return." By this point, the news had reached King Ignatius and was soon on its way to Zatlev. The vigil, on hearing what had happened, said, "He's uncovered a naked flame," before going to record the events down. As Ixalta and the tour group headed back to the castle, news arrived in Zatliv. When Vasilia heard about what happened, she left immediately to return home. The two siblings arrived home after ensuring the children were all safe and sound, back with their parents. Ixalta looked pale. You could see he was anxious and distracted. His sister held his hand in an effort to reassure him. His palms were sweaty as they entered into the palace. Themis was standing there, a blank yet fearful expression. "Your father wishes to see you, alone, Ixalta." Vasilia sighed. It sounded like he was in trouble. She headed off to get into a more relaxed frame of mind. Ignatius was on the balcony of his room. As Ixalta walked in, his father's voice bellowed across the room. "Do you know what you have done? What were you thinking?" "I did what I thought was right," Ixalta shot back. "But now you have the entire world knowing you have abilities," was his father's reprimand. Ixalta said, "I saved 200 children and thousands of titans. What should I have done? Let them die?" "Yes!" "I don't know," the king said back. "There isn't a right answer, I suppose," Ignatius sighed. "No. You did the right thing, even if it's slightly wrong." Themis entered the room and broke the silence. "I have news. The king of Zatliv is asking for a meeting at the Verge, right now." "You are coming along, Ixalta," his father ordered. As the two kings met, the tension in the air could ignite a spark. The two kings nodded. The formal handshake wasn't even an option with so much at stake. Bartholomew was the first to speak. "You've betrayed us, Ignatius. Your son showed no abilities at the Convergence. You a liar. How should we keep peace with you? Maybe he was your secret weapon to win the eventual war." King Ignatius spoke up. "It was not my intention to do so. I merely wanted to protect my son due to unfortunate circumstances. I'm sure you can respect that." Zatliv's king replied, "We would like to know all his abilities as a precaution, as you are aware of my daughter's powers." "Bartholomew, I do not know his abilities," confessed Ignatius. "Ignatius, my patience is limited. I will not keep the peace unless you reveal his power," Bartholomew mocked back. Ignatius was infuriated, and it was starting to show through the grinding of his teeth as Bartholomew lifted his chin up with arrogance. War seemed inevitable. "May I interject, my lords?" Themis inserted. "If we were to stage a convergence, it would solve the situation, I believe." Zatliv's king rolled his eyes and taunted back. "After the last convergence, he was powerless. I see no solution to this proposal. How about a convergence unlike any other, where the prince would be forced to use his powers, and he will have no escape plan, unlike all the other participants," continued Themis. Bartholomew thought before finally replying. "Very well, I agree, if it is possible to do this. How you do it is your own issue. Do you, Ignatius?" "I do," Ignatius quickly answered. The two parted ways as the vigil closed the Verge. "I thank you, Themis, for the help. However, how will we have such a convergence?" Themis answered the king. "My lord, I know someone who may help us. However, I require your permission, as he has been disgraced, and the only way is to undo a law you made 25 years ago." "It is granted, Themis, although I would need specifics. I thank you again." "One more request, my lord. After you tell the prince the requirements, I would like to have a few words with my nephew, if it pleases you," requested his brother-in-law. Ignatius answered with a half smile. "It's granted, Themis. You are his family too. but your respect is much appreciated." Excelsior, who had been standing at a distance, let out a deep breath before asking his father what had happened. After a few minutes, his father had told him what had been arranged. The convergence would not be a week long, but would rather last as long as it would take those participating to reach an area where they would be allowed to exit the arena. This wasn't a convergence to help the youngsters to bind to their abilities, it was born out of necessity. As the prince heard his father's words leave his mouth, he prepared to speak to Themis.